ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back to the stage the chairman of the Faith and Freedom Coalition, Dr. Ralph Reed.
Well, I hope you're as excited as I am that we have women candidates now, like Pam Bondi, the folks who were just on this stage, the Mama Grizzlies who are changing the face of American politics. We're going to be hearing in a little while from the presumptive Republican nominee for president. And you know, it's a cliche, but in this case true, that this is the most important election of our lifetimes. And this is the sharpest contrast between two major party nominees on the issues, from taxes to spending to national security to the protection of innocent human life, the institution of marriage, which we believe should be defined as a sacred union between a man and a woman, that we have ever seen. And Mitt Romney and Barack Obama are as far apart on the issues that the American people care about as East is from West. But my friends, it's more than just those issues that are on the ballot in November. Ultimately, in my opinion, what's on the ballot in November is nothing less than the Constitution of the United States and whether or not it's going to be followed or not. And specifically, the First Amendment. Not just our right to engage in the civic process and to engage in unlimited, unrestricted political speech, as important as that is. And I really appreciated soon-to-be Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell talking about how important it is, because it doesn't do us any good to be pro-family or pro-life or to be involved in groups like Faith and Freedom if the government can prevent us from speaking our mind and sharing what our views are on the candidates. But I think in addition to political speech, our First Amendment right to freely express our religious beliefs is on the line as never before. And if you look at the record of this administration, the current administration is the most insensitive to and the most openly hostile to religious freedom in American history. And if you think that's hyperbole, I want you to just consider the following. Begin with the campaign. When Barack Obama was at a fundraiser in 2008 in San Francisco, where he didn't think his words were being recorded, candidates are finding the hard way in the day of cell phones and YouTube videos that everything they say is eventually going to end up on the internet. And he said that folks like you and me, quote, cling to guns or religion because, quote, we have an antipathy for people who are not like us. That's his state of mind. He went to a Muslim country, and on foreign soil, he gave a speech in which he said America was no longer a Christian nation. He chose not to hold and suspended the traditional National Day of Prayer services that had been held in the White House for decades as a matter of tradition by previous presidents. He opposes the World War II Memorial Prayer Act, which has been introduced in the Senate by Senator Rob Portman of Ohio and Senator Joe Lieberman of Connecticut, which simply asks that the prayer that Franklin Delano Roosevelt led America in as American soldiers were landing on the beaches of Normandy, that prayer should be included in the World War II memorial. This administration opposes that legislation. Now, why, other than open hostility or insensitivity to acknowledging the religious heritage of America, would you be against that? He mocked and ridiculed Congress when they passed a resolution reaffirming that our national motto, which the president had publicly and repeatedly misstated, was E pluribus unum. the Congress reaffirmed that our national motto is, "In God We Trust." And when Congress did that, he got up at a public event and ridiculed the Congress and called out John Boehner by name and said, "What are you all debating up there? Why are you wasting time on acknowledging that we trust in God?" He said, and I quote, "I trust in God, but God wants us to help ourselves by putting people back to work." Now, President Obama, unemployment has been over 8% for 40 months under your leadership, and it's been over 9% for 33 of those 40 months. And we don't need you lecturing us about what to do to put Americans back to work or about how to trust in God. Then this administration, this president, ordered his Justice Department, his Attorney General, and his Solicitor General, who he appointed, to go into federal court and argue that the Defense of Marriage Act is unconstitutional. Now, keep in mind, the Defense of Marriage Act was passed in 1996 by a margin of 342 to 67 in the House and by a margin of 85 to 14 in the Senate. 2/3 of all the Democrats serving in Congress voted for the Defense of Marriage Act. It was signed into law by Bill Clinton. What Barack Obama is doing by going into federal court and arguing that a duly passed statute, passed by a margin large enough to pass a constitutional amendment and signed into law by a president of his party, is unconstitutional, is he would seek to overturn 1,138 separate federal statutory provisions that define marriage as between a man and a woman and force 42 states that currently define marriage as between a man and a woman to accept marriages from the other 8 states that accept same-sex unions. Now, former U.S. Attorney General John Ashcroft said that this action by the Obama administration reversed 2 centuries of constitutional norms and was an unprecedented break from executive branch practice. This is the extent to which this administration will go to undermine the various faith-based traditions of our country. Now, folks, I don't know about you, but I believe we have an obligation to turn out in the largest margins that we have ever seen in modern political history, because we need a president who understands that our right to practice our faith and to share our faith in God isn't what's wrong with America, it's what's right with America, and we need a president who will encourage it. And we're getting ready to hear from that man right now. But I'm going to turn the podium over. You know, tomorrow's Father's Day. And I'm going to turn the podium over to his son, Josh Romney, who is a successful businessman in his own right. He's in real estate, so pray for him. He is the father of 5 children, aged 1 to 9. He loves his father, and we're giving him the honor on the weekend of Father's Day of introducing his dad. Please welcome Josh Romney.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank Ralph for that warm welcome, and to each of you, I'd like to thank you for the role you're playing in this country. Too often, especially in this town, people believe that government knows best, that government knows how to solve all of our problems. But you in this room recognize that you play a role that no government can fulfill. You play a role in promoting faith, families, and freedom. So to all of you, I thank you for the work you're doing, particularly in this time of turmoil in this country. We're at a point of serious change, of serious problems, serious crisis. And so the work you're doing has tremendous value in making sure that this country remains the greatest hope on earth. So thank you for what you're doing. A few years ago, when we started talking about running for president again as a family, we really do recognize that as a family affair. When we started talking about it, we were reminded that my mom, after the last race, right after my dad dropped out, she looked at my dad, and we were all kind of standing around, and she looked at him and said, if in a few years we even start thinking about doing this again, shake me and slap me in the face and remind me how hard this was. And my dad kind of laughed and said, well, Ann, you do remember you said about that same thing after every pregnancy, right? And there's 5 boys, so fortunately for me and for this country, my mom has a short-term memory. Because she was the one that really was pushing my dad into running for president again. And when they talked about it, she asked him, she said, Mitt, can you turn this around? And he said, I think I can. And she said, well, then you don't have a choice, you have to run. And so we're in this as a family. I get to travel all around the country. I used to think I was the favorite son, but this January I was in Alaska, and I opened up my emails and realized my other brother was in Hawaii, and so I know I no longer have the favorite son status, but I do get to travel all around the country, meet great people, talk to great people, and really understand what's happening in this country. When I think you look at a person and value who they are, and determine what kind of life they've lived, I think you can look at the different accomplishments they've had, but in particular the challenges they've had to overcome. And when I look at my dad and the challenges he's faced in his life, they really started in the business world, where he was creating value for businesses, but also creating jobs, and working to turn around failed businesses, to make sure to keep livelihoods for thousands of Americans. And those were challenges that he faced and overcame, was successful more than not, very successful, and very proud of his career as a businessman. Then he went on to the Olympics and faced a challenge there, a challenge I think that threatened the reputation of this country with the Olympics, with the state of Utah, and overcame that challenge and put on what was, when he came in, they were a couple $100 million short of where they needed to be. By the time he left, they left with a $100 million surplus and pulled off what Bob Costas said were the most successful Olympic Games in history. So overcame a challenge there. Overcame a challenge in Massachusetts. When he came in, they had a couple $1 billion budget gap. Closed that gap without raising taxes. Left a rainy day fund, which the next governor spent pretty quickly, but overcame that challenge as well. But the greatest challenge for my dad, I believe, came in 1998 when my mother became seriously ill. She started to lose feeling on her right side and her leg and her arm. Started limping around a little bit, was having a hard, difficult time walking. So they went to the doctor together and ran a series of tests. As they were awaiting those tests in the next room, my dad looked at my mom and said, well, as long as this isn't fatal, we can get through it. We can get through anything as long as it's not fatal. We'll do whatever it takes. And when the diagnosis came back that my mom had multiple sclerosis, they held each other and cried. And I think at that moment, I think it was as hard on my dad as it was on my mom. She is the love of his life, his real dream. And so I think that experience for my dad was as tough on him as my mom. But over those next few years, to watch my dad really pick her up and carry her and do those things that she had been doing. He was having to start going shopping, grocery shopping. If you can imagine my dad out in the, going up and down and picking out food and making dinners and doing that type of stuff. But that was who my dad was. Loved my mom, cared for her, really helped lift her up and carry that burden with her over those next few years, and continues to do that today. If you see them on the campaign trail, you will know he is always conscientious of how my mom is doing, is so careful to make sure that she's treated well, that she's doing fine, that her health is good. And that really is who my dad is. And if you look today at the challenges we face as a country, the incredible challenges economically, socially, to our military, we need someone who's overcome challenges before, knows how to overcome them. Someone like my dad who has those values, that experience, and really knows what it takes to get this country back on track. We need a man like my father to lead us and continue to make us the greatest nation on earth. And as my opportunity and my privilege now, not only, I guess this is a great opportunity because my dad can hear me, but he can't talk back. This is kind of fun for me. So I can kind of say whatever I want, but I will say my dad is my hero. And so for me to be on the campaign trail and talk about him is a thrill. And it's an honor for me to be able to introduce him, the next president of the United States. And I will say, happy Father's Day, Dad. I know you can hear me. Hopefully I'll get a chance to talk to you tomorrow, but happy Father's Day a day in advance. But it's my privilege to introduce my father, Mitt Romney.
Thank you, Josh. What a great introduction. You can imagine how that warms my heart to see my son, or to hear my son rather, speak to you and introduce me in such a glowing way. I somehow don't remember him having ever said those things when he was a teenager, but I sure appreciate it now. And what an honor it is to have my sons campaigning for me and to have my wife doing the same. Thanks also to Ralph Reed and to you that are joining together today. Ralph has been a real champion in fighting for the fundamental values that have made America the nation that it is, and I appreciate the work that he has carried out over these last years to build a stronger sense of commitment to community and to the principles of freedom that define America. I thought I'd tell a story to begin with. When I was a little younger, not too much younger, I invited some friends to go with us on a motorboat, and as they were getting on, they said, "Have you checked your anchor?" And I said, "Well, no," but I happened to look at the front of the boat, and there in fact was the rope that ties the anchor to the boat, and I said, "But it's here." And as we went a little further along, I said, "By the way, why did you ask me about checking for the anchor?" And they told me a story that has stayed with me. Their son and some friends were skiing in a large lake. It's called Utah Lake, water skiing that is. And the person that was skiing fell, and they turned the boat around to go get them, and somehow they got the rope tangled in the propeller of the boat. And so they pulled the engine up and tried to untangle that rope, but they just couldn't do it. And it was pretty windy, and the boat started floating away from the water skier. It got further and further away. And as they drifted further and further away, someone said, "Throw out the anchor," and they went to get it, and they had no anchor. And so the boy that was driving the boat, and the son of the person that was with me, dove in the water with a life jacket and went to the water skier and made sure he had a life jacket as well. But the boat kept on floating and floated away, and ultimately these boys had to try and swim towards shore. It was late in the afternoon, became dark, and the boy that had been the water skier became exhausted and ultimately got separated from this fellow's son and drowned in the lake. And so anchors this father always checks on when he gets in a boat. I'm appreciative for the anchors that I've had in my life. I believe that the anchors of America have kept America from the vicissitudes of stormy seas and battling weather. We face extraordinary challenges today. And I think it's appropriate for us to reconsider what are the anchors which keep America strong and safe in times of turbulence. For me, probably the most important anchor that comes to mind on a day like this, with Father's Day on the cusp of tomorrow, is the anchor of family. I appreciate the sacrifice of my mom and dad. I'm warmed and touched by the effort of my sons. I respect moms and dads and sons and brothers and cousins and aunts and uncles and grandparents and you name it. I love all the members of the family. The idea that a family comes together and shares in common purpose and helps one another in troubled times. I remember when my dad was 88 years old that Ann and I were chatting with him one day, and Ann turned to him and said, "Dad, what was the most important accomplishment in your life? What gives you the greatest satisfaction?" He'd been a governor 3 times. He'd been a member of the president's cabinet. He'd run a car company. And I wondered what he was going to say. And without hesitation, he turned to Ann and he said, "Why, of course it was raising our 4 kids. The greatest source of joy and satisfaction in my life was the success we had in raising 4 children." Reminded me of something I heard Golda Meir, the former Prime Minister of Israel, say while she was serving as Prime Minister, was being interviewed on national TV here, and was asked that question, what was her greatest accomplishment? And she said, raising her daughter. This is a source of great joy and happiness to have strong and vibrant families. But but recognize as well that families are an important source of strength for the nation. Rick Santorum is fond of reminding us of the study that was carried out by the Brookings Institution, where they looked at the qualities which were the best predictors of happiness and, in this case, financial wherewithal. And in fact, 3 criteria were really quite amazing. Number 1 was whether someone had the chance to be married. Did they become married? Number 2 was whether they graduated from high school. And number 3 was whether they ever got a job, ever one time took a job. If they did those 3 things, the likelihood of them falling into poverty was only 2%. 2%. On the other hand, if they missed those 3 things, the likelihood of them falling into poverty was 76%, 3/4 of our people. And so if you want to fight poverty, family is one of the elements that's most critical. So I want to say thank you to those of you who are committed to the principles of family, to marriage, to all the elements that draw families together, and recognize the importance of this for the nation and for the happiness and well-being of our people. Now there's another anchor in my life and in the life of the nation, in my view. It's the anchor that was established by the founders when they wrote the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States. I think those founders were either brilliant or inspired, and probably both. The Declaration of Independence redefined the relationship between government and an individual. It said that the Creator had endowed us with our rights, not the state, not the king, the Creator. And among those rights would be life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We in this nation would be free to choose who would represent us. They would have the responsibility of providing for the sanctity and protection of our lives. And we would also have the freedom to choose our course in life. These choices made America the place on the planet that every freedom lover wanted to come. Every pioneer, every inventor. This is the place where freedom would reign. And came here they did over the centuries and built the most powerful nation in the history of the earth. So too the Constitution is an anchor. And of course we could spend most of your morning talking about the elements of the Constitution which are so extraordinarily defining. But the principles of the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, I believe, are frequently under attack, and they are again today. The decision by the Obama administration to attack our first freedom, religious freedom, is one which I think a lot of people were shocked to see. Cardinal Dolan in New York City, who was the chairman of the Catholic Council of Bishops, was surprised to see the president turn and take a different course than one he had promised during the campaign. A course which said to the Catholic Church that they would be required to violate their own conscience in fulfilling the obligations under Obamacare. Then there have been other attacks on freedom in this country. Economic freedom. There's no question but that economic freedom has been under attack by this administration in many ways. I'll note a few of them. Certainly, when you pass along trillions of dollars of debt to the coming generation, you attack their economic freedom. You attack their ability to live in a nation where their dreams can be fulfilled. When you put in place a bill like Obamacare, you attack the freedom of people to make a choice about their own insurance and what kind of coverages they want to have. You attack freedoms of Americans as well. When you raise taxes on them to a higher and higher degree, when you grow government to be larger than it needs to be, all these things impinge upon our freedoms, and in this case, our economic freedom. I think America is stronger when we're lashed firmly to the anchors that keep us steady in the storms of a world economy in turmoil. Anchors like our commitment to family, our belief in the Declaration of Independence, and in the power and the rights associated with our Constitution. I note that there's some things we have to do in a big hurry. We're going to have to get America recommitted and dedicated to those anchors, to the power of family. We need to strengthen the commitment that exists in this country to family. I hope to be able to talk to young people and tell them how important it is to get married before they have